Of course, my detractors are so stupid, they can't just do something without publicly talking about it. I do get chargebacks all the time. I really do. I just don't talk about them publicly. They're moronic. They just can't get enough of bragging about committing crimes. Here is the official announcement from PlayStation's Twitter account last night. It's either all or nothing. Either we're all in on hating Sony, or we are the biggest ball suckers of Sony around, and we want to massage the Sony. Like, no. Go. That is one thing going on. All right. Now, the other thing that I want to give you all an update on is in regards to chargebacks on this channel. All right. I mentioned this last week because it hit me pretty hard last week. Right in the middle of last week, I received over $200 of PayPal chargebacks for tips from back in April.
Yes, for anybody who didn't know, last week DSP was hit with about $250 worth of chargebacks, according to him. How true that is, we will honestly never know, because DSP's word is worth absolutely nothing at this point. But I know that I didn't do a video that included anything to do with the chargebacks because it was kind of a nothing burger, at least at the time. I mean, the chargeback saga comes back every once in a while. DSP uses it as a way to beg and be pitiful, and then he moves on like nothing ever happened. And that was kind of what was happening last week. He said that he got these $250 worth of chargebacks, and then he just kind of didn't say anything more about it. I honestly thought that that was going to be the end of the story. I thought DSP had finally learned something from his past experiences. Learned that going on and on about these chargebacks nonstop for weeks at a time even is just not a good look for anybody, and that it's not even worth doing when you look at how much money he receives from the extra begging. But I should have known better, because when has DSP ever actually learned anything? When has he ever actually improved his behavior? So of course we had to get a chargebacks update.
Okay, this sucks because when chargebacks happen, you half the time cannot really do anything about it. It depends on so many different factors: the nature of the chargeback, the size of the charge, how the actual tip was given, like what financial institution was involved, the nature of the chargeback, because there are different ways things can be charged back. So I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of it because you guys don't need to know that at all. And quite frankly, the less publicly known, the better, because you don't want idiot trolls out there to try to figure out ways to do it, right?
Exactly, DSP. That's what the detractors have been telling you for ages now. Constantly going on about how much chargebacks hurt you, and whether you do or don't win is not information that you should be giving out freely to the people who are looking to hurt you. It's never made any sense, and I don't know why he thought that it was ever a good idea. Even announcing that you're getting chargebacks the way that he does is just stupid. And that's why every time that he brings up chargebacks, I'm pressing X to doubt that it's actually happening. Because publicly acknowledging that these chargebacks are effective and that they are hurting you is just so stupid on every single level that I genuinely have a hard time believing anybody is that dumb. But to be fair to DSP, he has been known to raise the bar on how stupid a human being can actually be before.
But basically, it hit the channel hard last week. It sucked. But you guys rallied, and I had a solid last few days of streaming last week. And overall, I can tell you, it hasn't been that bad. Hopefully, you know, it won't impact the channel that badly at all. But now, just so you guys know, I've gotten wind from somebody else who has been kind of monitoring the situation that, of course, my detractors are so stupid, they can't just do something without publicly talking about it, because that would be like smart. You understand? They always have to brag about what they're doing to hurt me, even if it's an outright crime. Now, don't worry, they'll never get prosecuted for it because they're anonymous on the internet, which is the only reason why they do this shit. They're pussies, okay? But, yeah, they brag about it and talk about it all the time. They're just so dumb. All right.
I have to agree with DSP on at least one aspect of what he just said, unfortunately. If you're actually going to be committing crimes, I would not be announcing it, I would not be recording yourself doing it, and I most definitely would not be taking credit for it. Just a word of advice for any would-be detractors out there that think that any of that is a good idea. That being said, shout out obviously, part of the fun in trolling DSP or any online personality is letting some of that get back to them and knowing that they're being messed with. And that's especially true for DSP, given how paranoid he he actually is. By letting it out every once in a while that there are people making moves against him, even in a very trollish way online, you're going to send him into a frenzy. And unfortunately for him, that just appears to be his nature, and there's nothing that he can actually do about it. It's just going to be a vicious cycle that repeats again and again. Hence why they call it a cycle, actually. But I love that he just outright acknowledges that he has people that are monitoring situations for him, that are keeping tabs on all of the detractors and getting all of the information back to him so that he can properly plan or whatever. It's just so cringe, because it just shows that you actually care far more than you say that you do if you're actually taking into consideration the information that they're getting back to you. If you actually care about the detractor ops, DSP, just say so. Say that you actually care. Say it with your chest even.
In this case, the reason I'm bringing it up is because they are actually planning more chargebacks, and they are actively trying to hurt this channel by making it look like it's doing better than it is. So allow me to explain, okay? You may have noticed this last week already, we're 3 days into the streaming week, correct? You may have noticed that in the last few days, I've hit a bunch of tips goals, all right? Now, I'm not saying that that's abnormal or anything. Sometimes I hit tips goals around here, but I'll be honest, yes, yesterday, as I'm doing my React streaming day, which is a thing that I'm going to update you all on because it went pretty well, I'm wondering how it's going to go. And then all of a sudden, I start getting tips during the streams, some of which are people I recognize, some of which are people who are kind of newcomers from the last few weeks, but they've been a good part of the streams. And then I start getting tips that are completely anonymous. No name attached, no message attached, nothing. And a tip comes in like that, and you don't know what to do. I mean, I'm not going to discredit it. I'm going to shout it out and say thank you. But you never know if those are legit or not. Sometimes they're completely legit. It's just a viewer who wants to contribute but doesn't want to shout out because they're afraid of harassment on the internet or getting doxxed. And they're like, I'm just going to do it anonymously. Perfectly fine. And I totally understand that. And I really appreciate that because that helps things a lot and it keeps you safe. But at the same time, you have to be skeptical, right? When you're getting those kind of contributions and you're like, I don't know if this is going to be real or not. You know, you count it, you shout it out, you say thanks, but you never know what's going to happen with the chargeback.
And I know that I let him ramble on for quite a bit there, but I wanted to encapsulate all of the paranoia in one large segment, because there's just so much to go around. Paranoia of every anonymous tip that comes in because you never know when a chargeback is going to come through. Paranoia on the end of the dent head because they're scared of being harassed or doxxed or whatever for donating to DSP. Immediate suspicion and tracking of every single person who donates to DSP. It's just insane to me that this much paranoia and this much worry is going on during these streams. Where's the fun and chill vibes that you're supposed to be providing, DSP? Where is the escape from reality that helps people get through their day that you're always going on about how you provide to these people? This just sounds like a paranoid delusional mess every day. I've never heard any other content creator describe making content like this. And I think that there's good reason for that. One of which being that it's just not good content, at least not for you. But also because it's letting everybody know that you're insecure about this. You are genuinely paranoid about these things and that they can continue to mess with you in this way. I mean, the mere fact that he's even keeping track of the names or email addresses associated to the accounts that are donating to him is wild to me. It's totally normal to remember some of the usernames of people that are constantly in your chat or sending you nice super chats, which I definitely appreciate. But it's a whole nother thing to base your skepticism on a tip on whether or not you recognize the name or not. And before anybody gets any big ideas, if you're not aware, even if you troll tip DSP through PayPal for the chargeback lulz or whatever, he does in fact get your information. Just in case anybody thought that that would be a funny thing to do.
So basically what's happening is this. If you haven't noticed the last few days, there's been a few days when I'm hitting either the $50 or $100 tip skulls. And even to some extent, the other day I had the vest on and everything. It was like crazy over the top levels of support, right? So what's happening is these morons are now publicly saying they did this on purpose. They're coming to various streams and dropping a $20 tip here, a $30 tip here. Someone even said they did a $50 tip. And it's all anonymous, and they're planning on charging it back later. Now, you might say, well, I don't get it. Why would they even bother doing that? All it does is it makes it look like you're doing better, and you get perks, and everyone's happy. Well, here's what they're doing. They do it on purpose, because when it looks like I'm doing good on a stream, other people who are legit supporters might say, oh, okay, Phil's doing all right today, so I don't need to really contribute today. They'll come back later in the week and see if it's a slower stream, and I'll help them out there. In fact, no exaggeration, a fan actually wrote me an email and said that's exactly what happened this week. There was a stream where they were coming by and they actually liked the stream and they wanted to support, but they saw that I had already hit all the tip skulls. They said, all right, I'll hold off. I'll come back later in the week. And then come to find out, these detractor idiots are bragging publicly, oh yeah, I tipped on that stream and I'm going to just charge him back later in the week. So he would have gotten more, but we screw him over now. You see?
And I've always found this to be a really weird cope coming from DSP. Because what does that say about the reason that these people are giving you money, DSP? Because to me, it sounds like they're merely tipping you or giving you some sort of cash simply so that you can continue to exist. Not because they actually like the content. The reason that they're actually supposed to be supporting, the content. And I'm not sure whether or not he actually understands that that's how it comes across, or if he just doesn't care that he's pretty much the biggest internet charity case there is. But for a guy who's constantly going on about how everybody just supports him because they like the content and that's the way that you're supposed to do it, and that by giving him support it shows that you actually enjoy the content, I think the way that he's describing this just outright contradicts that point at all. Because it shouldn't be about whether or not you're hitting the goal to them. It should be about the fact that they're supporting the content that they like to see, and if they're not doing that simply because you hit the goal, then I guess they don't like the content then, huh? And let's say that is the case. DSP hits the $100 tips goal, so all of a sudden all of his dens think that they don't have to support him anymore. At what point do you think that DSP would maybe think about not having a tips goal set at all? That way there was no cap on how much money he was going to make. I mean, I don't have a business degree like the guy, but if he has actual confirmation from these dens that they're not giving him more money simply because he hit an arbitrary amount that he designed, it would probably be a wise idea to just remove that arbitrary cap that he's put on by himself.
So that's what they're doing. They're basically trying to make it look like I'm doing better than I am. So that way people are fooled and then they hit me on the back end. All right. Why am I telling you this? Because I just want you to be aware that it's happening. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking for any change in behavior from you whatsoever. I just want you to know that this is going on actively and that when you see things going on YouTube, it's not always as it appears.
But none of this is supposed to be your audience's concern, DSP. None of this is any of their business. You should just be making the content that they want to see and moving on. I'll never understand how he made one of the primary focuses of his streaming career, of his content creation career, talking about his finances. Because it's not like he's a financially savvy guy and has wisdom to part with. I mean, he spent $10,000 already this year on a WWE mobile game. He's not imparting any sort of financial wisdom. He's just begging all of the time and letting you know that he's broke and needs your money, obviously. So despite following the guy for multiple years at this point, I'll never understand how there can still be people who support this behavior, who support this type of content where they're constantly being audited. Where is the unironic appeal to this type of content? I just don't know where it is.
A lot of these people say, oh, I track every single dollar that comes in from a content creator, and so I know that they make this and this and this. It's totally untrue. There's always a behind the scenes world of chargebacks, fees, all kinds of stuff going on. Half the time, anyone who's tipping me less than, say, $5, I'm getting significantly less than what you're even seeing. Remember that PayPal has a flat fee that they take per transaction plus a percentile of each transaction. If you tip me $1, I get like 60 cents, if that. It depends on where you're from, what region. So there's all these factors involved. And then I do get chargebacks all the time. I really do. I just don't talk about them publicly. But the reason I brought it up last week is because it's very abnormal to be getting that much of a hit of a chargeback all at once. And yeah, that definitely hurts the channel when it happens. Okay.
And of course, there is the confirmation that this is actually affecting DSP and there's nothing that he can do about it. If there was ever a thing not to say when it comes to chargebacks, DSP, this was it. But I do have to appreciate him bringing back a classic bag. It is one of my favorites. And that's the fact that PayPal takes a fee out of every single one of these tips that DSP receives, which is obviously just a sneak bag, letting everybody know that he's not actually receiving all of the money that you're sending him, so maybe you should send him more. I just remember hearing this for the first time in 2019 when he was playing, I believe it was Days Gone, and it was becoming a meme on his Twitch channel that you have to pay, what was it, like $1.30 in order to counteract the PayPal fee, and for some reason people were legitimately doing it. So like I said, just really glad that we could bring back such a classic bag.
So FYI, don't make judgments just based on what you see up front, because it may not be true, just saying, and listen, to the person who wrote me that email, I really appreciate that message because now I know what's going on. And absolutely now I kind of understand the nature of what's happening and why they're probably doing it. Well, hopefully talking about it like this and spreading awareness, at least we'll have some people, know what's going on. And hey, if you come by and you like the content, please support it. And, if you want to hold off on supporting, you could do that too. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but just be aware that what you see isn't always what you get, right? We may be having a great time on a stream, celebrating with perks and having a good time, and maybe looking silly in a vest and a hat and going, having a great stream. And the next thing you know, later in the week, it all got taken away from me. And that sucks. And I'm not saying that's happened yet. It hasn't, but it very well could.
Did you hear how many times he conflated having a large amount of tips come through into his PayPal to having fun on the stream? He really said 3 different times that he could be having fun on a stream and it could all be taken away from him simply because the tips that he received were fraudulent. I don't know how many of you stream out there or how many of you create any sort of content at all, but the fun that you have while making them, the fun that you have while streaming is not taken away from you simply because the money was fraudulent, because you didn't receive the funds that you thought you did. Sure, it can definitely put a damper on things in the future, but it doesn't take away from the fun that you had in the moment. You still had an enjoyable stream. You still had a day that you actually enjoyed having. But of course, that can't be the case when it comes to DSP and his streams. If the money wasn't legitimate, if there's chargebacks involved, DSP is retroactively going to remove all of the fun that he had and act as though he hated the stream, regardless of how much fun he appeared to be having, which, let's be honest, is never all that much to begin with because he doesn't actually like streaming. When he talks like this, though, it just becomes so transparent that he actually has no business in this field. He's not a genuine entertainer, he has no charisma, and he doesn't enjoy being here. It's all about the money, and that's the worst way to go about this.
And again, if these idiots weren't so dumb to publicly talk about and announce what they're doing, I wouldn't even know. But they're so dumb, they literally do. They post it on Kiwi Farms, they talk about it on Discords and in video comments and shit like that. I mean, they're moronic. They just can't get enough of bragging about committing crimes. Because when you commit a fraudulent chargeback, it is a crime. You have actually broken the law. Just the fact that it's not prosecuted on the internet doesn't mean you didn't commit a crime. It just means you got away with it. Okay.
Well, unfortunately for you, DSP, I actually know the get out of jail free card now. All you have to say is that Nick Rakita told you that you could do it. So for any of my chargeback style detractors out there, now you have the secret weapon. Feel free to employ that at any junction. But now we're going to be moving on from the return of the chargeback and into the Sony Defense Force segment that DSP actually gave us that exact same day. So please enjoy this double feature.
All right. So the big news story we got today that I'm sure everyone wants me to talk about. All right. We have triumph for the democracy. Because, ladies and gentlemen, after almost an entire week of controversy regarding Helldivers 2 on PC and the requirement to have a PlayStation Network account to continue to play it, Sony/PlayStation has done a complete 180 on their decision. Here is the official announcement from PlayStation's Twitter account last night. Helldivers fans, we have heard your feedback on the Helldivers 2 account linking update. The May 6th update, which would have required Steam and PlayStation Network account linking for new players and for current players beginning May 30th, will not be moving forward. Instead, we will be auto-debiting $99.99 from each person's Steam accounts because you really are whiny and we just are tired of your crap, and this is for payment for it. I'm just kidding. I made up that second part.
And this right here is the moment that I knew that this was going to be a Sony defense segment. Because despite all of these players and consumers being in the right on this one, if you ask me, DSP still felt the need to make a joke about it and act as though they're entitled. To act as though there's some sort of whiny child that is getting their way and should be punished for it. And obviously this was meant to be a joke, I understand that. But the fact that the joke was about the players instead of the company that actually did the wrong thing tells me a lot about what DSP's actual views are on the situation.
No, I'll read the second half for real now. We're still learning what is best for PC players, and your feedback has been invaluable. Thanks again for your continued support of Helldivers 2, and we'll keep you updated on our future plans, okay? So, that's good news. I mean, people fought the good fight, right? They downvoted the crap out of the game on Steam. They very, very verbally gave their discontent about this requirement on the internet. and tried to refund the game on Steam, and some people were successful and some people weren't, and it worked. Sony has caved. It took 6 days, but Sony caved, and there no longer will have that requirement on PC moving forward.
And that'll be the statement that I can most agree with DSP on during this entire segment. Yes, these people fought the good fight, did what they were supposed to do in order to have their feedback taken into consideration the way that it was. And fortunately for everybody who bought Helldivers 2 and likes playing it, that requirement has been removed. A W for all gamers. Way to go.
Quite frankly, as we discussed, did the requirement even make sense when the game had been out fully functional and having no issues for 3 months? No, it didn't. It was just something that probably Sony boardroom members and bigwigs sitting at a fucking boardroom table having no actual understanding of gaming as a whole, sitting there and say, no, we just need all of our games to have it because we need all our numbers inflated so we have more PSN people so we can control what they do online, which they don't. They're just full of shit, you know? Just a bunch of fucking people who are out of touch with gaming, making gaming decisions.
I think it has less so to do with the fact that they're not in touch with gaming and more so in the fact that they're too involved with money, too involved with business, too involved with disrespecting all of their customers. Because you don't have to be directly involved with video games or be in tune with them into any capacity to understand that adding stupid requirements that aren't necessary to a service makes them a worse service. And the fact that they actually made this decision knowing that you couldn't create PSN accounts in a large variety of countries is the ultimate disrespect to everybody in those countries, in all honesty. So like I said, I think it has less to do with the fact that they're not actually in the games industry and more so with the fact that they're completely okay with disrespecting their entire customer base.
So this is great news. This obviously means the effort worked. And so, yes, those who stood up for what they believed in should be applauded. The people who spread the word, the people who talked about this all over Twitter and social networks and the internet in general, and the community for Helldivers should be proud of themselves, right? They definitely stood up for what they wanted and made it very clear that this change made no sense. You were going to lock out thousands of people from playing a game that they paid for and have enjoyed for 3 months. You were going to create all this discontent and negativity in the community over what? What is the benefit of PlayStation Network linking? Zero. It wouldn't have benefited anyone. So I'm happy they did this big 180. Now, I'm going to say kudos to Sony, not for making the bad decision, but for showing that they're a company willing to listen and change the course of the ship dependent on customer feedback. That shows that is a company that is in touch and willing to change on the fly.
And DSP giving any sort of kudos to Sony for this is kind of akin to me giving any sort of kudos to DSP for achieving the very bare minimum and understanding what people actually want. In the same way that I would give DSP a big ups for muting the microphone when he sneezes, DSP is sat here giving the big ups to Sony for, I guess, listening to player feedback, but I actually still hate it because this isn't something that they should be congratulated for going back on a terrible decision that was going to screw over a very large player base. If you were going to jump in front of a car and then you decided at the last moment not to because somebody told you that it was going to hurt, you don't deserve a pat on the back for that. That's just the type of thing that you're supposed to take into consideration beforehand.
But it's weird because now I'm seeing people say things like, well, I still don't think I'm going to trust Sony in the future because you see at any moment they could just try to institute something like this. It's very anti-consumer, so I still don't like Sony. And it's like, wait a minute. Hold on a second, right? Can we be fair here? In life, people make mistakes, right? Now, if you notify someone, listen, you're making a mistake. I want you to know you're making the mistake. I want to tell you why it's a mistake. I want you to understand the mentality and sentiment of everyone around you who agrees this is a mistake, and I hope that you're going to change your mind. And if a person hears all of that feedback and actively listens and says, okay, I hear you. I understand. I've changed my mind. I will not do that. I will not make the mistake. Okay? Do you forgive that person and say that person grew? That's awesome. They listened. They grew. This is exactly what you want out of a person, right? So why would you not give that same benefit of the doubt to the company?
because I believe full well that the company knew exactly what they were doing. I believe that they had ill intentions from the get-go and didn't care who they were stomping on to get there. They just happened to underestimate how big the backlash was really going to be. I think that they expected a little bit of backlash, absolutely, but they didn't know that it was going to be as big as it was, and that's the only reason that they actually changed their mind. And you said it yourself, DSP, the game was entirely functional for multiple months in a row, so why would they add this requirement that nobody was asking for when it was very clearly not needed? And if they're willing to try this once with a game that was already out, they're probably going to continue to make that a requirement for games in the future going forward. So while I think that it's a gamer W that a bunch of people who already purchased Helldivers 2 can continue to play that game without that dumbass PSN requirement, going forward, Sony gets no respect from me, and I hope a lot of people feel the exact same way. Not that I had too much respect left for them anyway after some of the things they've done throughout the years, but this can be the cherry on top.
Sony, in this case, was making an awful decision. They listened, they learned, and now they, within a week, made a big decision. Hey, let me tell you something. A corporation doing a major decision like this in a week is pretty big. These corporations usually are so full of bureaucratic bullshit, and you have to vote and fucking fuck around to do anything. The fact that they actually came to a decision in a week and did a big 180, that's a huge thing. For Sony and for gamers at large, that's a giant cool thing to know that you have that almost community line of contact to Sony.
The community line to Sony, DSP, people were mass refunding the game because they felt that the company had screwed them over and they were going to be potentially locked out of playing a game that they paid for. And I feel like I can't stress this enough. It was all over the fact that they wanted you to make a PSN account in order to play the game. An account that has actually nothing to do with the game and would only complicate the process of playing the game, therefore making it an inferior experience to the game that people were already playing and purchased. If the game legitimately didn't work without a PSN account, and that's the way that it had always been, I guess you could argue in favor that that's just the way the game was designed and you have to make a PSN account. But unfortunately for Sony, they've already made it clear that the game functions entirely fine without one. So for what reason would they be trying to make you make a PSN account in order to play this game, other than to try and scrape your data or boost their numbers in some way?
And this is a huge positive. I don't know why people would now have the mentality, well, we could just never trust anyone ever again. Fuck Sony and fuck. Like, wait. Come on, man. At some point, you got to at least give some credit where credit is due and be like, they did the right thing. Let's not be dicks now, right? Because that's what it is. It's like, it's either all or nothing. Either we're all in on hating Sony or we are the biggest ball suckers of Sony around and we want to massage the Sony dick. It's like, no, you don't have to massage the genitals and you also don't have to wish them death. You can kind of be somewhere in the middle in life. You don't have to hate or love. And in this case, I think this is a situation where, yeah, we got to be skeptical about Sony in the future. They may be making more problems, but at the same time, if they're willing to listen, that's a good thing. Let's give them some credit and let's not feel so negative. The sky is falling, fucking world-ending shit. I mean, come on, you know?
I guess it wouldn't be a DSP segment if we didn't get at least one genital reference, would it? But this is just DSP once again showing everybody that he's incapable of learning from his past experience. Because if somebody's betrayed you in the past, you should be wary of them. You should keep a watchful eye on them. Let me put this into terms that you might actually understand, DSP. Hang on. Okay, so let's say that you own a sandwich shop, and you happen to overhear that one of your employees is intending on stealing from the tips jar that you leave out on the counter. So you confront said employee and tell him that you feel betrayed that he would do that and that you wish that he would have communicated openly with you from the beginning and you could have worked something out potentially. And during the confrontation, the employee acknowledges that they were in the wrong, and moving forward, they have no intention of stealing from the tips jar. Are you meaning to tell me that you would just let this person continue to work under you, DSP? That you wouldn't keep a close eye on them if you do? Because if you ask me, that's grounds for termination, and I would never let that snake back in my nest. But from the way that you're talking, it sounds like all is forgiven. And moving forward, this person is entirely free to continue working exactly the way that they were working unsupervised. It's just insane to me how he can go from absolute paranoia in the last clip to the point where he's talking about potential chargebacks that maybe could happen, but he's not sure yet. But when people are outright wronged by a AAA studio, a major corporation, he immediately goes to bat for them and acts as though everybody is supposed to be patting them on the back for doing the thing that they should have done from jump by removing that stupid PSN requirement that had no business being a requirement in the first place.
But stay away from Sony genitalia, okay? Well, Maximum Turbo says, here's the thing. They didn't grow, mature, or learn. They're scared they were going to lose out on money, and they made the smarter decision to rescind their plan. Very well, you may be correct. Those bigwigs in the boardroom probably walked in all of their tropical shirts. I'm sure they dress up just like me. They don't wear suit and tie or nothing. They just walk in looking just like me. And they sat down, and they had Mai Tais and, pina coladas in their hands, and they were drinking, and said, all right, so we're going to lose a lot of money today. What do we do? Do we lose the money or do we keep the money? Well, I think we should lose the money. What? Anyway.
It's moments like that where I'm just stuck wondering, like, who is this segment for? Who is finding this amusing? Is somebody genuinely laughing at this on the other side of the planet from me right now? Was a bit like that not just objectively grating to every human being on this planet? Because that's how it felt to me.
No, I get what you're saying. But, I mean, let's be honest, in the corporate world, money talks, right? So the gamers rallied together. They showed that they were going to act in this way if this other thing happened, and they directly changed the attitude and decision of a major corporation, and that's huge, right? Now, let's hope that Sony learns. You're right. If this is a case where Sony just continuously keeps up bad decision, and everyone has to keep doing this to get them to stop making these bad decisions, that's going to be stupid and suck. We got to hope that maybe they learn something from this situation in their boardroom. Between sips of Mai Tais, pina coladas, smoking cigars, and going out on their yachts for the week, hopefully they learn something, right?
Well, DSP, from my brief existence on this planet, I've realized that corporations learn just about as quickly as you do. And by saying that, I mean that they almost never learn, and it's usually just a lost cause. Anyone who is genuinely hoping that Sony has learned their lesson from this, I just hope that you're not waiting with any sort of bated breath, because you might just find yourself with an oxygen deficiency sooner rather than later.
Because we all know that's what all the Sony executives do all week. Anyway, all right, so anyway, that's good news. And absolutely tremendous. Hopefully now I don't have to talk about the Helldivers 2 situation anymore. It's been a heck of a week talking about it every day in the news. I hope now that the news is all good, right? Cool. All right, that's DSP news for today, folks.
And that's actually going to be both clips for today, folks. But obviously, before we go, we're going to take a look at some of the comments from the last video. So, of course, it's big ups to the 60 Skulls. Baltic Lightning says, his ability to make an already boring nothing burger of a topic somehow more boring is genuinely shocking to me. How do you make explaining ice cream even more boring than it already is? And I think the answer to that question is simple, really. DSP just makes these stories way longer than they actually need to be. Because for a normal person, it's as simple as saying, I went to a Cold Stone Creamery. It was pretty robust, but I wasn't happy with how expensive it was. I won't be returning too often. He managed to turn that into an entire segment. Broside Phil says, spending on the wrong things, because of course Phil judges how other people spend. Well, of course he does, because every dollar that's not sent directly to his PayPal absolutely should be. How dare these people treat themselves to a nice sweet treat on potentially their day off, when he has so many more Hogans to pull? Life really is unfair for a small-time content creator style guy like DSP, isn't it? And Snake Piskin 5889 says, him ending this silly thing with I just want to get it off my chest because who else is he gonna talk about it is really fucking sad, and confirms he just treats pre-stream as a therapy session. I 100% agree with you, and it's one of the reasons that I wanted to take a look at these two nothing burger segments. Not only is it content that had no business existing in the first place, but it just makes it all the more clear that DSP has no friends in real life to talk to, and that he is socially isolated so much so that he treats his own pre-stream like a therapy session. If it were anybody other than DSP, I might genuinely feel bad for this person, but fortunately enough, it is DSP, so I don't have to. And speaking of people who don't have to feel bad for DSP, all of the people that watched this video, especially if you made it this far. Hopefully I'll catch all of you guys in the next video, but until then, make sure that you check out other Detractor content and dive deeper into that. Snortex.